Jamie with Stoneware Games, and I'm here as usual at 10 o'clock St. Louis time on Wednesday to answer your questions, to share Stoneware Games news, and to discuss a variety of random topics for about an hour. And as usual, if you miss this live chat or if you come in late, feel free to check it out on YouTube. I'll throw it up on YouTube after this, and that's where we'll continue this conversation. So I hope you are having a great day. This is the last day of March, and normally I might do an e-newsletter on this day, but I decided to wait until next week. So I'm going to do our monthly e-newsletter on April 6th, partially because I'm hoping then we will have some definitive news about Red Rising shipping in the US and Canada that I want to share with a lot of people. I am pretty sure, I'll say this unofficially, I'm pretty sure that we are actually ahead of the schedule that we revised a week ago with the US in particular, where we thought it was going to be the container was going to take most of April to arrive at a fulfillment center in the US. And it looks like it actually may have hit port and gotten to port and might be on the way to St. Louis right now. So still holding out hope for that. I'm not going to confirm that until it actually arrives at St. Louis, but there is hope that Red Rising will be ahead of the revised schedule that we posted about a week ago for the US. And the US also includes everywhere else in the world that is not Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe, because we ship from the US to those areas. And the Canadian shipment of Red Rising is now on that same schedule, headed to Toronto now, as far as I know. So anyway, that's why I'm waiting until next week for our next e-newsletter. Tomorrow is April Fool's Day. Last year I did something fun for April Fool's Day where we created some products months in advance of April Fool's Day and sold those products for April Fools. They were real products, including brown colored, chocolate colored trays for candy eggs. If you want to have candy eggs while you're playing Wingspan with a plastic egg, so you can differentiate between the two. That is still a real product that is on our web store. And we also sold magnifying glasses for those who want to be able to look at hard to see text on components in games, kind of poking fun at ourselves for having some games with text that is maybe a little bit smaller than it should be. And so those products are still on sale. I didn't do something like, well, I kind of did something like this year. The speckled eggs for Wingspan were going to be that product for April Fools, but we decided to just go ahead and start selling them last month because we had them in stock. So I don't have any plans for anything special on April Fools tomorrow. I might do, tomorrow is the day that I normally post a blog on the Stomar Games blog, so I might do something then, but my worry is always that people will confuse it with fact, even though it's April Fool's. So I will navigate that tomorrow morning when I'm trying to think of what I'm going to blog about tomorrow. But I don't have any big plans. I'm curious if you have any plans for April Fool's or if you've heard of companies doing anything for April Fool's. And I'm curious if you've ever seen a company do something on April Fool's and you maybe found out after the fact or were confused about whether or not it was real or not, which is generally the confusion that I avoid on April Fool's now that I run a company. Before that, I loved April Fool's. I was less concerned about that. I always did something for April Fool's, but now I have to take that into consideration. Let me jump over to the questions real quick and see if there's anything at the beginning. Looks like we have some people joining us today. Yeah, Tim commented on no e-newsletter. Jesse says that Joe's customer service is great. That's wonderful to hear. It confirms what I have seen from Joe. I think Joe does do a great job with customer service. Joshua says the last 3 months has been the longest I've lived outside of Central Time. Outside of Central Time, yeah, that's right. You moved out of Central Time, Joshua. Yeah, it's a different time now for you. Tim is joining us from Scotland. Tim, who is working on the Red Rising scoring app, which will be ready pretty soon. Tim has shown me a beta version of it. It looks really, really good. I'm excited to share that with you very soon. And let's see, Jenway has a question about Red Rising shipments, which I just answered. I think you probably saw that, Jenway. You said, is the U.S. shipments were going to be behind the rest of the world for Red Rising originally planned, or was it delayed? So what we announced on the, I'll back up a little bit. We ship things out of China when they're ready. So we use a couple different ocean freight carriers, and there's no delay in terms of when things are shipped out of China. Just sometimes things are loaded onto shipping containers at different times. They're released from port at different times. For Red Rising, when we had the pre-order coming up, what we knew at that point, what we thought we knew at that point, was that the shipping container for the US and Canada, those containers were going to arrive at their respective fulfillment centers in early April and then begin shipping in early April. So that's what we knew then. And then the shipping container, particularly for the US, was projected to take a lot longer than we thought. And so that information changed as of around a week ago. And then what I'm telling you now is that it looks like it's back on track for what we projected as of the pre-order date. Yeah. But we do, I mean, ideally, with all things, we would ideally have everything arrive at the fulfillment centers, our 4 fulfillment centers arrive at the same time and then ship at the same time. But Australia is a different distance from the U.S. than the U.K. and Canada is a different distance. They all have different problems that can occur at port. So when you're dealing with multiple fulfillment centers, you try to align it, but things end up unaligned simply by those different variables. Yeah. Ben says, help me find someone to paint my minis from My Little Scythe. Well, if you post in the My Little Scythe Facebook group, you might find someone there who is willing to do that for you. Allie says, are there plans for a second print run for the Red Rising Collector's Edition? The boxes currently say first printing. Yes, they do say first printing. We don't have any plans to do another printing of the Collector's Edition, but we are open to doing so in the future if there is demand for that. And that's why we put first printing on the box. So even if we do a future printing of the Collector's Edition, you still have the special first printing version of the Collector's Edition. Yeah. Kai says, have you checked out the Magna Roma on Kickstarter? He says it's a really interesting tile placement game. It's the first game I was involved in the development process. Interesting, Kai. So Kai, for those of you who don't know, who is my co-designer for the Wind Gambit, the expansion to Scythe, or the second expansion to Scythe. And Kai is both a designer and now he's a developer, which I love to hear. And Kai, I have not checked that out, but now that I know that, I'm definitely going to check that out. How did you like, I don't know, Kai, if you want to talk about this, but how did you feel about being on the development side versus the design side? And the difference between, for those of you who are watching who don't know the difference, the designer is the one that creates the game. They create the idea, they run with the idea, they prototype it, they play test it, they develop it, they get it to about 90% ready. And then often they either hand it off to a publisher or they might hand it off to a developer. And that developer takes it from that 90% and they bump it up to 100% ready based on it being more balanced, more intuitive, more fun, more streamlined. Sometimes the publisher serves as the developer, sometimes a developer is the developer. And in this case, Kai was the developer. So he helped take a game from being pretty good to hopefully really, really great, which is always fun to do. I get to do both of those things in my job too. Sometimes I'm the designer, sometimes I'm the developer. Carlos has a question, and he links to a video here in the comment. He says, I really like your video from a while ago. The video I called, What If I Could Only Design and Publish 10 Games in My Lifetime? Carlos says, I think you've done a lot to the hobby, creating new worlds, bringing themes that stay away from the classic themes of board gaming, bringing exposure to existing IPs, etc. What do you feel is the next milestone that you want to achieve in board gaming as a designer? Yeah, thank you for asking that, Carlos, and that's a very nice way to phrase that question. For me, the next challenge, the challenge that I've been working on for a while, is to design a cooperative game. I've designed a number of, five competitive games at this point? Is it 5 or 6? Somewhere around there. I think it's 6. Let's see. Scythe, Charterstone, Viticulture, Euphoria, Red Rising. I feel like I'm forgetting one. No, maybe it's just 5. Yeah, I think that's right. I'm probably forgetting one. Yeah, I think that's right. Oh, Tapestry. Tapestry is the 6th. There we go. Didn't want to forget about Tapestry. So 6, yeah. So I don't know if it'll actually be my 7th game, but cooperative game. All 6 of those games are competitive, and I am focused on a cooperative game right now. Yeah, that's my challenge. I know that's nothing new to design a cooperative game, but that is new for me, a new challenge for me. Genway says, do you guys plan on doing updated metal cubes for the colors? No, we don't. So I've talked about this quite a bit, but I'll say it again. The metal cubes in Red Rising, there's some cubes that are fairly similar in color to each other. But the reason that is that we didn't paint the metal cubes. This is the actual color of the metal. Because if you paint a metal cube, you still have that nice heft, but there is definitely a loss in quality when you paint a metal cube. And maybe we should have done that anyway, because quality is important. That quality feel of a metal token is important, but also functionality is really important. But the reason I didn't do that is that the cubes that you have in Red Rising, they're so easy to just place separately on the influence track, or the influence area. You can have a little pile of your cubes and a little pile for someone else's cubes, even if those colors are fairly similar. So it is very easy for you to differentiate them during the game because you know this is my stack, this is someone else's stack. of influence tokens. So that's the reason that we use those metal cubes. I knew going into production that we had some colors that were fairly similar, but I didn't want to detract from the quality of those metal components by painting them. Um, they're limited number, and this is why I'm partially answering your question here that there isn't an alternative. The only alternative is to paint the cubes. There isn't a different color that we could use because there are very limited colors of metal that you can use for metal components. And maybe that'll change over time. If that changes over time, maybe we'll release another set of metal cubes in a newly available color. But that currently is not the case. Ivan says, have I read The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle? It's the best mystery novel that I've read so far. I think you'll love it. I have not, but I'm going to look that up after this live cast. Thank you for that recommendation, Ivan. I'm currently reading a book called The Inheritance Games. I actually just finished a book called Machine Man last week that I really enjoyed, and now I'm reading The Inheritance Games, which is well, I don't want to spoil anything. It's an interesting novel so far. It's interesting. I can't spoil. I can't say what the book is without spoiling like something that happens a good 10 chapters into the book. So, I'll write about it on my blog later. Maybe spoil a little bit if people want to know more about that. Roberto is here. He says, "Have I checked out Dwellings of Elder Vale?" And I haven't yet. No, I haven't been able to get a copy. I did consider like Breaking Games made some copies available on their web store the other day, but the version that I wanted to go after, which was the $99 version, was sold out before I had the chance to get it. And the other versions were a lot more expensive. And I haven't played the game. I don't even know if I'm going to like it. So I'm not going to shell out $125 for a game that I don't even know if I'll like. So I did not get it. That game is definitely still on my want to play list, as is Cubitos. Cubitos is the new one that I'm really excited about because I love racing games. I love push your luck games. Joshua says, have I played Search for Planet X? I have, yeah. Yeah, it's by the wonderful design team of Ben and Matthew who worked on Between Two Cities and Between Two Castles. And yes, I have played it. I have a video about it from maybe around a year ago. Feels that way, but it could be just a few months ago. Yeah, sometime last year I played it and posted a video about it. Rich says, have I played any games from Vital Lacerda, and which is my favorite? He says, I recently purchased On Mars and it's melting my brain. I have not played On Mars, but I have played, I believe, when I counted a while ago, I think I played 4 of them. I played Kanban. I've played the heist one. I forget the name of the heist one. Played 2 other ones. I forget the 2 other ones. And what was the other one? I think maybe Kanban might be my favorite of that bunch. Yeah. Yeah. But it's a tepid like from me. I think Vital is an amazing designer. I love how he mixes theme and mechanisms, but the weight of his games is the Gallerist. I play the Gallerist too. The weight of his games is above the typical weight that I aim for when I play games. Justin says, when I was younger, when I was playing online games, April Fools was super common. RuneScape was always the best at it, and me being super gullible always made for fun times. Yeah, I asked earlier if anyone is doing anything for April Fool's Day, or if you have ever been fooled by April Fool's Day, particularly by a company. Because I was talking about how I am hesitant as someone who runs a company to do something for April Fools unless it is real, like the real joke products that we made last year, because I don't want to confuse anyone. I don't want to pop on tomorrow on April Fool's Day and say, hey, we're running a Kickstarter tomorrow, because even though some people will know that's a joke, a lot of people won't know that's a joke, and then that'll cause a lot of confusion, sometimes even angst, and I don't want to do that. So it's weird having a sense of responsibility there in terms of the things I have to consider when doing an April Fool's joke now. Oh, Tim mentions my shirt. Yes, Tim says I have a coffee shirt on. Yes, Tim. Yes, this is a shirt that I got. I always forget the name of the company. Let me look it up because I meant to give them credit for this shirt when I was doing this. I think it's Meeple Overboard, but I think that might be a YouTube channel. Here we go. It is heroics.ca. Also, oh no, he has 2 different websites. Lane is the guy who gave me this shirt, who sent this shirt to me. The company is meeplecrossing.com, meeplecrossing.com. And yes, they make awesome t-shirts, and he was very kind to send me this one. I do have my little cup of coffee here, which reminds me, I have not done the chocolate of the day, and chocolate of the day today are the mini mini milk chocolate peanut butter cups from Trader Joe's. We went to Trader Joe's last week and stocked up on these because they're amazing and delicious and incredibly addictive, and they smell really good. These are on my desk right now. I'm smelling these as I'm watching this, and they smell so good. I can't wait to dig into these after I'm done this video. But that's my chocolate of the day. What is your treat of the day? Are you treating yourself to something delicious today? John says, would Stoneware games ship with other bigger publishers to fulfillment centers to reduce costs? Um, Stoneware Games is kind of a big publisher at this point in terms of the number of games that we are shipping to fulfillment centers. So we don't need to combine with another company. As long as we fill shipping containers, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to fill at least a 20-foot or a 40-foot shipping container, and we do that. So we don't really need to do that. That's a great question, I think, for smaller companies that are maybe shipping smaller quantities, but we have enough games to send to our fulfillment centers that we pack those containers pretty tight. Let me jump back over to my topics real quick, then I'll jump back to questions. I'm a few minutes behind on questions, but let's see. Games that I played recently. Last night, we played a two-player game of Burger Brothers 2, the new Burger Brothers, which was really, really cool. It's always neat to see a sequel learn from the original game and do some really, really interesting things. So I'll be doing a video about that soon. Burger Brothers, if you don't know, is a cooperative game. It's a cooperative game that I really, really love, a puzzly cooperative game, and there is a sequel to it. Also have been playing the Hero Realms cooperative campaign. We finished up the first Runes of Something scenario pack. I think it was 4 games. And I continue to love how this company, now called Wise Wizard Games, how with Hero Realms campaign, with the Shards Infinity campaign, I love that they are short campaigns. I love that we can play a 4-game campaign, even in a single sitting if we want to. We usually spread it out over a couple days. But I love that. I love these little mini campaigns. Also played Nidavellir. I still can't pronounce this word, Nidavellir, on Board Game Arena, and played the Whatnot cabinet. Oh, and we played Small Islands on Board Game Arena as well. Played the Whatnot cabinet in person. Oh, and last week after this video, I went and got vaccinated. We got vaccinated last week. I don't know if you can still see the shot there, but yeah. So I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. I was on a waste list, so making sure that no vaccines go to waste, and I got called or I had access to one of those vaccines that might have otherwise gone to waste. So I am very excited to be vaccinated, and I hope you are able to get vaccinated too. Jerry says, viticulture is one of my favorite games. I think the theme is an integral part of my enjoyment. In what other games does theme play a big part in your enjoyment? That is a great question, Jerry. I would say a recent one is Lost Ruins of Arnak. I love the theme of exploring, like the Indiana Jones style exploring. And I think Lost Ruins of Arnak does a really good job with that theme of letting you not really know until you go to the exploration spots on the board what you're going to find there, what the new action space will be, and what kind of monster will be waiting there for you. And I think I really enjoy that theme personally. Calva says, please don't feel shy to share some news about Between Two Castles Madqueen Ludwig expansion. Okay, so I will share one bit of news here. Originally, we were planning on starting to talk about it in next week's e-newsletter, the April 6th e-newsletter. However, with how long the Red Rising shipment took to get from China to the US, took twice the time, or it is on track to take twice the time that it normally would take. I don't want to do that with the next product. Now I have that information. I want to learn from that, and I'm going to wait a little bit. So it'll be instead in early May that I start to talk about it, and then we'll do the pre-order. If it stays on schedule, if the shipping is as we hope, will be in late May. So that is currently the plan for Between Two Castles. I look forward to sharing information about it in early May, on our early May e-newsletter, and the days that follow. Yeah. Hey, Scott Morris is joining us here from GTS Distribution. He says, a note to say thank you for continuing to be engaged with videos like this for the community. Tell Alex I said hi. Thank you for dropping in, Scott. That's really nice. Scott is one of my favorite people in the industry, and it's fun to work with him at GTS now, although he primarily works with our director of sales, Alex. That's who he's referring to there. Joshua says, early on in these pre-orders, did you only did pre-orders for things that were already in the warehouse? Yeah. The last few have been after manufacturing before arrival. Yeah, the last few, well, I definitely know for Red Rising. I can't remember the previous one. Not the case for Speckled Eggs. Speckled Eggs were in stock. But yeah, sometimes when something is taking a little bit longer to get to the fulfillment center, we still go ahead and proceed with pre-order. Joshua says, aside from COVID delays, do you expect one of these models to be more common in the future? I greatly prefer for everything to be in our fulfillment center when we start the pre-order, because then I take away uncertainty. That's one of the big things that I look to do with our pre-order system. I want to take away all the uncertainty that can happen when a game hasn't actually arrived at the fulfillment center yet. So my hope is to basically get ahead of schedule moving forward, so that the products are in our fulfillment center by the time that we start the pre-order. Joshua says, you designed Rolling Realms, so 7 competitive. That's true. I did design Rolling Realms too. So there's a 7th game. Patrick says, I was just talking about actually Lost Ruins of Arnak. I'm behind on comments here. Patrick says, his wife and I picked up Lost Ruins of Arnak. I know you tabled it a while ago. Have you played since? What is your favorite mechanism from Arnak? I have played. I played it, I think, 4 total times at this point, and we just played it 2 weekends ago. You can see a post about that on Instagram. And my favorite mechanism in it, I did a video about it. I don't know what my favorite mechanism that I said in that video is, but it has a really clever system for kind of scaling up the cards you have access to. Early on in the game, you have access to cards that are going to help you build your engine, and then late in the game, you have more access to treasures that give you points and powerful one-time abilities. It has a really interesting system for doing that I like. Rafa says, what are the games for Stoneware games that I was a developer for? And I should clarify that. I have not been a developer for any games that were not Stoneware games. It's only all of the games that we publish that I am not the designer for are games that I served as a developer for. So Pendulum, Wingspan, Between Two Cities, Between Two Castles. I'm missing one. My Little Scythe. I was the developer for all of those. George says, can it be cooperative with competitive elements? I think the closest you can get to that is cooperative games with traders in them. There's probably some other examples. There's certainly semi-cooperative games like CO2 and Australia. But I'm talking about fully cooperative when I talk about designing cooperative games. And most often when I talk about cooperative games, I'm talking about fully cooperative. Yeah. Maxime is reading Red Rising. I see a couple of people saying they're reading Red Rising, which I'm always happy to hear. John says, what's the most challenging thing when trying to make the civilization adjustments in Tapestry? He said, I played a game with my fiance the other day, and she took it with the spies, beating his aliens pretty handily. I don't know if I'd necessarily, well, it's always tough to make a change. I mean, it's a big deal when we make these little adjustments. Even though they're little adjustments, it's a big deal when we do it. We try to do it very sparingly with Tapestry, even though it is still a living game in terms of the different expansions. But really, I think the hard part is on our data analysis. Jeremy is a data analysis that I work with to analyze all the data that we have that people have reported from playing Tapestry. And so he does the tough job of analyzing that data and looking at information, like things under the surface that are not easily apparent when I just look at like which civilization is won more often and what their high score is. So Jeremy, it's all the analyzing that Jeremy does that I would say is the most challenging part. Giovanni says, how do I determine when to put a Stomar game on sale? I'm really wanting to get Tapestry and Charterstone. Any plan for the sales on those soon? Yeah, that's a good question. So sometimes we do sales for anniversaries if a game's anniversary is coming up. So sometimes we do that. Charterstone's anniversary is definitely not for a while. Neither is Tapestry's. But I would say right now on our web store, if you go to our web store, you can see that Champions get a 25% discount on everything. And you can see that price. So basically everything on our store is always on sale for Stoneware Champions. And because of that, I rarely put our products on sale for other reasons. I try to generally stay away from that because, especially now that it is a 25% discount. That discount used to be less. It used to be a $10 discount per order. Now it is 25%. So with Tapestry, that is a significant discount on Tapestry if you get that from our web store. So probably not going to be on sale for a long, long time. And I would just recommend signing up to be a champion and getting that discount. And that discount is good for an entire year after you sign up to be a champion on everything you order from our web store. That's a 25% discount on the product and even on shipping as well. Yeah. Nick says, I need to get my first Stoneware game. Where do I need to start? I'm definitely interested in Scythe and Wingspan. He says, I'll be honest that the theme of Scythe calls to me more, but I've heard so many amazing things about Wingspan that it's impossible not to be intrigued. Yeah, Nick, I would, well, So we could have a conversation about this. The conversation would be, Nick, what are some of your favorite games? You could tell them to me. I could then recommend some of our games to you. And I love that you're drawn in by the theme of Scythe. I think that's a great place to start. Wingspan is also very, very popular. We're really happy with what Wingspan brings to the table. So both of those games, all of our games, I'm going to say I'm happy with all of our games. One thing I would recommend checking out is go to our website, go to stonewaregames.com, and look at the gift guide. It's under the shop menu at the top of the page. So drop down the shop menu and go to the gift guide. And we've broken down our products by personality type. And so just in case that helps a little bit here in this decision point, that might help you decide based on your personality what you're looking for in a game. But it's great that you've already narrowed it down to Scythe and Wingspan. I don't think you can go wrong with either of them, honestly. Yeah. Gunnar says, any suggestions on publishers for drinking games? I have no idea which publishers are publishing drinking games at this point. No, that's something that I've not paid attention to. Jake also recommends The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, another recommendation for that book. Well, I will definitely have to check out that book then. Kai says, I asked Kai what it was like to be a developer, and Kai says it is a completely different experience to pursue a strange idea, but it's a lot of fun. He says, I still prefer to design a game because they're more free in the work process. Yeah, I can definitely see that. I like a little mix of the two. I was surprised by how much I enjoy the development side, but I still really enjoy the design side of games as well. I'm going to pause on Joshua's questions real quick and come back and see what other topics I have to cover. Random things I've been watching lately. I just started watching Mythic Quest on Apple TV. We just finished watching Ted Lasso on Apple TV and really enjoyed it. And we're watching Resident Alien on Peacock. And I don't want to have Apple TV forever because we have too many streaming networks right now. We have 7 right now. But I am curious, if you have Apple TV, what shows you would recommend on there while we have it. As I've also had some great chats recently with Todd Satterson, with Jim at What Board Game. That was a great chat the other day with Jim and Nick, actually. Nick was there too. And a great chat on with Long Distance Gamers, which is an interesting YouTube channel that focuses on playing games long distance with people across the country, across the world, but using tabletop versions of those games and different setups and different methods of playing those games, but playing them remotely. That was a really interesting chat. And also my videos and blog posts recently have been about rewarding games. That was my top 10 video this past Sunday. Games that are very rewarding and don't ever punish you. They're only rewarding. I did a blog post on Monday, a fairly controversial one about giveaways. And then I did one last Thursday about multi-product campaigns. So Kickstarter campaigns that feature more than one product. So Joshua's question is, how could a fully cooperative game require mini competitions between players such that if a player doesn't compete, they're at a disadvantage to win a cooperative challenge? That is a big prompt. That's tough for me to think of on the top of my head, but that is a great prompt, I think, for designers to consider, Joshua. Very interesting prompt. I think maybe Dead of Winter touches upon that a little bit. Genway says that game I was trying to think of for Vital Lacerta was Escape Plan. That's the heist game I was thinking of. Wesley says that he played a big Scythe game this past Saturday and that it felt epic. That's awesome, Wesley. Tim says, do you ever start designing a game and find another game that came out with a lot of similarities? This happened more often in the past, but now I'm pretty aware of maybe 80% of the games out there. But it certainly has happened. And let me go with the rest of your question here, Tim. Tim says, I've started coming up with what I feel is a really pretty original game. A game just went live on Kickstarter that I instantly backed yesterday that has a mechanism and subject I was considering. May have to rethink some things. And then he says, then again, having some inspiration like Fantasy Realms for Red Rising isn't all that bad either. Yeah, I think you can be innovative, but still build off the foundation of being inspired by something else. Like we did with Red Rising. That's a great example. Red Rising is not Fantasy Realms. If you play Red Rising, you can see that there's a lot of elements that are very different from Fantasy Realms in Red Rising. But it still has that connection to it. It still has definitely that inspiration from Fantasy Realms. And I think both are worth playing. I think both are worth having in a collection. Yeah. So I wouldn't have made Red Rising if I thought, okay, you could have Fantasy Realms or Red Rising in your collection. I don't think I would have done that because then I would have said, Red Rising or Fantasy Realms already exists. We don't need to make another version of it. So we didn't. We made a new game with a foundation based on Fantasy Realms. Hi Chu says, question for Wingspan. Does the existence of this... Oh, I just missed it. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question? I'm going to scroll down a little bit because Facebook does this thing when I get behind on questions that it skips past them. So I'm sorry about that. Can you repeat that question? I will come back to it. I missed the rest of it. Gunnar says, I have a well-tested and refined prototype, both physical and a simulation. Would it be better to start it myself or submit it to publishers? I think the key question there, Gunnar, is do you want to be a designer or do you want to run a business? Do you want to be a publisher? Being a designer is one very specific thing. It's just designing games. Being a publisher is you're running a business then. It's a lot of different things, but that might excite you. It excited me. So it depends on what you want to do there, which responsibility you want to take on. Yeah. Let's see. I'm scrolling down here a little bit, make sure I don't miss any questions. Um, David says, what is my favorite game, not a party game, for 6 to 8 players? So a non-party game for 6 to 8 players. So not a party game. I like Citadels. I put Ink and Gold actually above Citadels. I really love Ink and Gold. Um, Probably Ink and Gold. I really, really love Ink and Gold. Yeah. Mira, I'm glad Mira got my friend Mira got the vaccine. I'm glad to hear that as well. John says he saw that I played Shazan on the other day. Saw on Instagram that I played Shazan. What did you end up thinking of that game? I do have a video about it if you want to check that out, John. It's one on my YouTube channel, I think last week. And I thought it was really, really interesting. A very interesting mix of a social experiment, because the game asks you some difficult moral and ethical questions, and then it ties that into some really mechanical aspects of the game, both engine building and area control. So thought it was a very interesting mix of two different genres that actually mix together really, really well. Freddie says, given that I play so many games, do you take note of any mechanisms that work well for your future use and refinement? I do, yeah. I have a long, long list of mechanisms that I enjoy, that I respect. And part of them are my YouTube channel is that. My YouTube channel is me talking about my favorite mechanisms in games. So I always have those to go back to. But I also do keep notes on a list making app called Trello that I use for tracking ideas, both theme ideas and mechanical ideas. That's Trello, Trello. It's a great free list making app. I have it up on Chrome usually on my computer. Tim says that he recently ordered Lowlands. He says it's part of the Uwe Rosenberg collection of games that he endorses along with Viticulture Essential Edition. That's interesting. I didn't know Uwe endorsed Viticulture Essential Edition. Do you know of other games in this set? I haven't been able to find much on it. Just to clarify, Viticulture is not one of Uwe's games. He did help out with one of the expansions to Viticulture, the More Visitors expansion, but he didn't design Viticulture, so I'm a little surprised that's in his collection, or collection of games. But maybe he just has a collection of games that he endorses along with his games. Maybe that's the case with Lowlands. Have I played Lowlands? I think I have played Lowlands, but it was only once. Do I know of other games in the set? No, I have no idea. I didn't know this was the thing. If you have a link to that, Tim, I'd love to see it. I wasn't aware of this endorsement. Yeah, but that's pretty cool. Daniel says, as a designer, have you ever thought of a design that would not align well with the Stoneware Games motto? If so, would it make sense to approach a different company or create a new branch of Stoneware Games? Definitely, yes. Yeah, I definitely have ideas, and even ideas that I pursued a little bit that don't fit into the types of games that we make. Contractually, and for good reason, I put this in the contract. Contractually, I cannot design games for other companies. My sole focus is on Stomar games, so I cannot design a game that would be published by another company. And so, in that respect, I only want to design games that Stomar games would publish. Sometimes I just have fun with them. I have an idea, I want to pursue it, I want to try it, I want to stretch my limits as a designer a little bit, and I might test something for a little bit, just to have fun with it, and then I set it aside. Because my sole focus is Stomar games. I want to focus on the types of games that we would publish. As for an imprint, it's something that we've also talked about a little bit. Maybe someday we'll explore that, but I think that will dilute our core competency if we do that. So, I don't think that will happen. Mike says, a question about Between Two Castles. Will the expansion fit in the original box? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Designs. You'll see how it works out, but we designed it specifically to fit into the original box. Jerry says, will I be attending any conventions this year, assuming they are a go? Now that I'm vaccinated, I would say this: I I am open to attending conventions if it's safe for me and safe for the people around me. And I think a big part of that is that everyone who attends is vaccinated. Uh, I know that's tough for kids in particular, especially Geekway to the West is my favorite convention. I love Geekway to the West, but it's a family convention and kids can't get vaccinated yet. So that's tricky, tricky to navigate there. There is a small convention that Stomar Games runs every year called the Stomar Games Design Day, and again, our approach to it is we will hold it this year if we can hold it safely, and most likely we will say that the only people who can attend are those who can get vaccinated, and those who can't get vaccinated, we will offer something else for them, something virtual. But my top priority is the safety of everyone who attends the event. So that's what I'm thinking about conventions right now. At most, it will be Stomar Games Design Day and Geekway in I think October, November, if everyone's vaccinated who attends those conventions. Yeah. Jonathan says he's looking forward to his copy of Red Rising. He has a question about licensing. He says, when Iron Harvest was being developed, how much say did you have or want to have in their use of your IP from Scythe? Yeah, that's a good question. I should clarify some stuff there. So we only have the tabletop rights to Jakob's 1920 plus world. So we have the rights to Scythe. Scythe is the tabletop game that we have rights to, and any other tabletop game in the 1920 plus world. Separately, King Art Games came to Jakob and said, "Hey, we want the digital rights to this world. Can we have them?" And Jakob said, "Yeah, those are his rights to have," and he sold them to Iron Harvest. And somewhere along the way that Jakob told me about it, but I knew very little about it. I was not involved at all. And King Art Games, I think I've exchanged maybe one email ever with them. Very, very little contact with them because they are a separate company with a separate license with Jakob. It all comes back to Jakob. Jakob's the hub. He owns the IP. Yeah, very little connection there. The only thing I would say was it was nice to see the King Art Games like credited, didn't credit, but give a shout out to Scythe on their Kickstarter page because a lot of the things that they used in their game were stuff that I originally worked on with Jakob. So that was nice to see. Yeah. Javier points out that we're talking about cooperative games. Forgotten Waters is a cooperative game with competitive component of who wins more constellations. That's true. There is a slight competitive element there, and you can even it's a pirate themed game. So even though it's cooperative, you can kind of get in little brawls with other players in the game. I thought that was a clever way of integrating a slight element of competition in the game. Yeah, nice thematic touch. Nick says, have I ever considered making a tug of war game, such as Watergate or Twilight Struggle? The mechanic seems interesting to me. Yeah, Nick, yeah, I do. I have a video about my favorite tug of war games because that is one of my favorite mechanisms. I love tug of war games. And currently, yeah, I definitely thought about it. I don't have one right now. I think they work really well for two players, and they're a lot more difficult for multiplayer games. And we only publish games that play from at least two to up to 5 or 6 players. So there is an exception to that. There is Dogs of War. Dogs of War is a multiplayer tug of war game. And there's one other one recently that I heard about, or maybe that I played. I can't remember right now. But yes, I am very interested in that mechanism. And if you were to check out my video about my top 10 favorite tug of war games. Cooper says, am I or Megan baseball fans? Opening day is tomorrow. Yeah, that's actually one of my topics I was going to talk about today. I am a mild baseball fan, St. Louis Cardinals, but I am more of a fantasy baseball player. And we had our fantasy baseball draft this past weekend. And for the first time ever, I've been in this league for like 14 years, 15 years, maybe even longer. And we, for the first time, we used an auction draft, which felt very much like playing a tabletop auction game with with these other managers, my other friends. It was very interesting. Like someone would, basically the way it works is that one of the managers would pick a player. If it's your turn, you pick a player and you put that player up for auction for all players to bid on to have on their team. And you can bid anything you want, but you have a limited amount of money to spend over the course of the entire auction to get all 21 players that you have on your team. And so it was really, really fun. It had this strong auction game feel because sometimes it would come around to be my turn and I would throw up a player that I was not interested in and I would try to bid them up so that other people would spend more money. Definitely a learning experience though. I ended up with too much money. I had too much money at the end and I spent too little money early on some really high profile players. I would tweak that a little bit in the future, but it was a lot of fun and I'm excited about the fantasy baseball season to start very soon. It starts today. Yeah. Sarah says, how long does a container take typically between arriving in port and shipping? She says, I'm moving next week, so debating which address I need to list on my order. Yeah, good question, Sarah. Uh, it really depends. I mean, there are all sorts of weird delays that can happen. But if a container has arrived at port, typically it takes. I mean, when things are running really well, it takes a week. It takes a week to get through processing and get on the train and get off the train at the fulfillment center. It takes about a week. I'd say in these times it takes around 2 weeks. But my recommendation for you, Sarah, I don't know if this is for Red Rising or for another product, but if you are moving, I would recommend picking an address close to your either your destination address, your final address, or an address near that. Maybe a friend near there, someone you know in that area that you know for sure is going to be there when delivery happens. I actually would probably not pick your own address in that case. I would pick someone else's address who will definitely be there, no matter if it's shipped a little early or a little late. Yeah. Win says, I feel so bad whenever I have to throw away an empty but beautiful game box after purchasing an expansion or a big box. Is there a way to mitigate this paper or art waste? One thing you can do is hang it on your wall. I've seen a lot of pictures where people take beautiful game boxes and they mount them on their wall. And I don't even think it takes much technology to do that. Maybe just a few nails to put it in the wall and hang the game on the corners of those nails. That's one way that you can really display the games and use that art in your house. You can also cut off the lid. Some people go into more effort and kind of cut off the lid and frame it or frame a bunch of different box art in the same frame. That's pretty cool too. As for from the publisher side, there are ways to mitigate that, but usually they involve using plastic instead of cardboard, and that has other downsides too. But both have an impact on the environment. Anytime you're using a factory to assemble or make anything that has an impact on the environment, but by using plastic, you're almost definitely saying you are going to throw this away. You're creating disposable plastic, which is the type of plastic I generally try to avoid. Whereas cardboard, it can still be recycled, but yeah, it just I don't know. Both plastic and cardboard can be recycled, so maybe it isn't that bad. But I just think with plastic, you were just guaranteeing that someone is going to throw that away or recycle it. Whereas with cardboard, there's a chance that someone might actually use it. Yeah. Dexter says for future April Fools, you should offer cat first player markers for all the games. That's a cute idea. I do love cats. No cats here today to show you, unfortunately. Um, Win recommends The Morning Show on Apple TV. Chris recommends For All Mankind. And Danielle recommends The Servant and The Morning Show. Awesome. Yeah, I asked earlier, I said that I have Apple TV for maybe a month or so, and I'm looking for recommendations. So thank you for those recommendations. John says, with regards to long distance games, do you use, and he names a couple platforms here. The one that I use on here is Board Game Arena. I really love Board Game Arena. Yukata.de is also pretty solid. And if I'm playtesting and I need to playtest remotely, I use either Tabletop Simulator or Tabletopia. I haven't heard of Tabletop Playground. That's new to me. Jonathan says, do your friends avoid playing games you have designed for fear of being crushed by the designer, or are they incentivized in playing it so they can beat the designer at the game? It depends. I do let my friend. I don't try to impress or press my games onto my friends and say I want you to play this. I typically wait if they are really excited to play one of my games, then I'm excited to play that with them. And I think in general they are. I don't know if either of those things are really reasons that they do it. If a friend wants to play one of my games with me, it's because they enjoy the game. And I don't have a high win rate on my games, because I like to experiment and do different things. So I don't think any of my friends are afraid that I have an advantage when I play those games, at least. Cooper says, could I see Stomar Games making a polyomino game? I can, because we have already, and it's called Tapestry. Tapestry uses 3D polyominoes as you build your capital city. Yeah. Bradley says, there's been some talk here about how to make competition in a cooperative game, but what is your favorite example of adding cooperation in a competitive game? I do have it. So I have a YouTube video, as I often do about these answers. I have a YouTube video about positive player interaction. And one of my favorite examples from our games, I'll name one from our games, is in Euphoria. Players are incentivized to work together to construct the markets. So that is, it's a strong moment of positive player interaction where you're cooperating together to build the market. And I love that in Euphoria. And there are many other games that use those moments of positive player interaction, those moments of cooperation as well. But that's one that comes to mind off the top of my head. Let me see. I will probably focus on questions for the rest of this time, but let me see if I have anything else. No, I think I have covered everything that I was going to cover. Not any big Stoneware Games news today. I don't have any prototypes or anything to send you. I know that I have a new version of the Wingspan big box prototype coming pretty soon, but I don't have that to show to you yet. And I think we have some the overlays for Pendulum that we're working on. We have those on the way too, but I don't have that yet either. So don't have anything to actually show you today from Stomar Games, unfortunately. Robert says Fantasy Realms. He says Fantasy Realms as that 10-minute game where you build a 10-card hand. Fantasy Realms is a handcrafting game where you start out with 7 cards, and over the course of the game you discard cards, and then you gain cards so that at the end of the game you have an amazing, hopefully an amazing 7-card hand. That's the game. It's not 10 cards. I think the number 10 you're thinking of is because the end game is triggered in Fantasy Realms when there are 10 face-up cards on the table. And I actually, just speaking of that, I just got the expansion of Fantasy Realms. I'm really excited to play it. It's not supposed to play with just 2 players, so I haven't played it with Megan yet. But I'm going to bring it to a bigger game day this weekend to play there. Yeah. Shakit says, something I really dislike in cooperative games is when all the information is available to everyone, it opens up the floor to alpha gaming and people telling other players how to play their turn. Any chance that you can eliminate that from your cooperative game? Yeah, I mean, there are lots of considerations when I thought about designing a cooperative game, and one of them is limited information. I love limited information cooperative games, especially when it makes sense thematically. And I also love when you take away the ability for an alpha player, but still have the possibility for collaboration. I think those two things are important. To not have someone that can just direct everything, but also not have a lack of collaboration. I think players need to collaborate for it to be a true cooperative game. And yes, those are things that I've been thinking about. I actually have a video about my top 10 favorite cooperative games where you can't quarterback, where there isn't an alpha player. And I just yesterday I filmed a video about cooperative games that present a puzzle for players to solve together. So it's not the type of style of cooperative game where you are being punished by the game. You're fighting against the AI. You're not struggling against the AI. It's the other type of cooperative game where you have a puzzle that you're solving together with players. And that's my favorite version of a cooperative game, and that's pretty much the version that I'm designing. Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything about that, but yeah, that's the version that I'm aiming for in my design. Robert also said, is Red Rising similar to Fantasy Realms? Red Rising was inspired by Fantasy Realms. So Red Rising is also a handcrafting combo building game where on your turn you are getting rid of a card and then adding a card to your hand on most turns of the game. However, Red Rising does a lot of other things in the way you do that. Like the location matters. There's a board, and the location where you deploy a card matters. There's a deploy ability when you get rid of a card, so you're not just discarding it. You're actually activating an ability on the card that you're getting rid of from your hand. And there's some other things that are very different in Red Rising compared to Fantasy Realms. You can learn more. There's a lot of information on our website about what Fantasy Realms is. I'm sorry, about what Red Rising is. Let's see here. George says, what am I reading at this moment? I'm reading a book called The Inheritance Games, and I just finished a great book called Machine Man. Ben also asked, am I going to Geekway if they have it in October? And I mentioned a few minutes ago, I will consider going if everyone's vaccinated who attends Geekway. Yeah. Let's see. Just scrolling through looking for questions here. Giovanni says, would you ever be willing to do a video on how you personally store Scythe in the Legendary box? I know it's meant to be stored as you wish designed, but it would be cool to see how you store yours. Yeah, I could do that. I don't know if I do a video solely about it, but I could maybe do it on a livecast sometime and have that as part of the fun, or maybe do it on the Scythe Facebook page. I have to look at my box to see how I store it. There's a lot of stuff in that box. Michael says, we own Red Rising, Charterstone, Euphoria, Tapestry, Scythe, and Wingspan. Which one is closest to Viticulture as we've never played it? Probably Charterstone. Charterstone, yeah. Charterstone is probably the closest because Charterstone is also worker placement. Viticulture has engine building like many of our games do. So, like Tapestry has engine building, Scythe has engine building, Wingspan has engine building, Charterstone has engine building. So they all have engine building, but I would say Charterstone is probably the most similar to Viticulture in terms of the worker placement. Justin says, hey, Justin's here from Room 51. He says, do I like motorsport? Formula One had a fantastic season opener last weekend. Would love to see an F1 Stomar game. I must admit, Justin, that while I love racing games, and that's why I'm really interested in playing Cubitos soon, I do not care at all about car racing. I'm sorry to admit that. I can tell you're really passionate about that. It's just not my passion. But I love that you're into it. I love your excitement for that. And maybe I just need to follow it a little bit and learn more about it, because then I might be a little bit more excited about it. Yeah, but no, I know nothing about F1 or any sort of racing. Michael says, "Is there any chance of you producing a Scythe card game?" Um, so let me word this carefully here. Uh, there is a possibility that I will design a game in the Scythe world, a new game in the Scythe world. It won't be like Scythe, the card game. It won't be that. It would be a completely different game in the Scythe world. And like pretty much all of our games, there's fairly high likelihood that there would be cards in that game. Yeah. Ash asked about any news on the Wingspan Big Box. I mentioned, I know I'm behind on questions here, but yeah, I am expecting a new prototype fairly soon on the Wingspan Big Box that I will show here when I get it. Yeah. Allie says, "I've been loving My Little Scythe. Any future plans to publish more children family games like that again?" So yeah, family games maybe gear a little bit, aim a little bit younger or skew a little bit younger. We currently don't have any plans for that. Yeah, currently not. There's one game we're working on that I think will appeal a little bit to families. We'll have to see what you think about that, but it's not in the My Little Scythe style of a game that is kind of geared towards a younger audience. No, we don't currently have anything else like that. But I love that you're enjoying My Little Scythe. Appreciate you saying that. Glory Hound pops in and says that we were talking about what you can do with game boxes that you don't use, and she says we have a framed cardboard insert of an older copy of Stratego. I actually still have my old copy of Stratego, my childhood copy, and the box is very tattered. I don't know if it would even look good on the wall, but I love Stratego. Matthew popped in from Canada to say hi and to say that he's enjoying the Red Rising books. I love this. I love the love for Red Rising books while you all are patiently waiting to get the game. That's awesome to hear. Giovanni says, "Have I seen Seaspiracy on Netflix? A very shocking documentary. I've never even heard of Seaspiracy. No. Um, yeah, that's interesting. No, thank you for sharing that. No, I've not heard of that documentary." Genway says, "Is there going to be an app version of Tapestry on the horizon?" Yeah, there are two versions of Tapestry Digital in the works. One is in the works by Tim, who I mentioned earlier. Tim, who's working on the Red Rising scoring app. He's working on the full AI app for Tapestry, and also Board Game Arena is working on a version of Tapestry as well that requires human players. You need human players to play anything on Board Game Arena. Yeah. Tim mentioned actually that Lowlands, this game that he mentioned earlier, has cooperation in a competitive game as you build dikes together to prevent waves from drowning your sheep. I'm pretty sure I've played this game. It is ringing a bell, but I think I've only played it once. Yeah. Mitch says that Sky Traders is a board game that has a market as well that the players manipulate, kind of like Clans of Caledonia that has a wonderful market that players manipulate. He says it causes prices for different goods to go up or down. Yeah, Mitch, if you like Sky Traders, I highly recommend Clans of Caledonia. I haven't played Sky Traders, but what you said there sounds a little bit like Clans of Caledonia. Uh, Michael is getting ready for his second vaccination tomorrow, and he thanks me for my games. Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Shakid says, "I just ordered your book about Kickstarter in preparation for running my first campaign in a year or so." I love hearing that. I love that you're preparing that far ahead. That's awesome. So many, I hear from so many people who say, "Hey, I ordered your book for my campaign that I'm going to launch next week." I'm like, nope, nope. Uh, that's not what the book will tell you to do. So thank you for getting the book, though. My book is called A Crowdfunder's Strategy Guide. He says, "How relevant do you think it still is today?" And I actually think I've gone back and asked myself that a couple times. And fortunately, I think pretty much every lesson I talk about in the book, spare maybe a few like very detailed things, still applies because it's a lot about, even though it's a very detailed like how to do these things, it's also, I also tell my story along the way, my Kickstarter story. And I also talk about kind of the philosophies behind things like community building. And I think those philosophies are still maybe even more applicable today than they were when I wrote the book back in 2014, 2015. Freddie says, "What is your favorite faction inside and why?" He's quite new to my channel. Yeah, Freddie, my favorite faction inside in general, I wouldn't say it's even a specific faction. My favorite, the faction that I will play inside are factions that I haven't won with in the final published version of the game. Those include Saxony and Albion. Saxony and Albion, I think, are the two that I have not won with. And so I like to play those. I like a challenge. They just go slightly against my play style usually, and so I like that challenge of getting out of my comfort zone and trying a faction that way. If I want to be in my comfort zone when I play Scythe, I play Polania because I love exploring. I love the encounters. A couple of people are saying they really enjoy Cubitos or they're getting Cubitos. Nathan says, if I'm interested in learning more about F1 racing, check out the Netflix docuseries Drive to Survive. It's an excellent dramatized look into the world of Formula One. Well, thank you, Nathan. I appreciate that. And that's a good recommendation for Justin if he hasn't heard of that. Justin says, motorsport, this is Justin who talked about F1. He says, motorsport is a lot like baseball, where if you don't know anything about it, it's super boring. It makes it a lot better when you have someone explaining what's happening so you know how to follow it yourself. And Justin, I can completely relate to that, especially for sumo wrestling, which like I studied abroad in Japan. I even attended a sumo tournament when I was in Japan, but I didn't really know what I was watching. I didn't really know the rules of the game, the rules of moving up in the ranks of sumo wrestling. But then a friend described it to me in detail, like you said here, described it to me in detail what it was all about. And now I am fascinated by it. I watch every sumo tournament in Japan now ever since that. So that's a great way of saying that. I can completely relate to what you're saying there. Tom has a tip about using game boxes. He says, I saw someone put the bottoms of unused game boxes on the wall with push pins, then simply put the top on. Oh, that's really clever. Okay, so just use the box bottom, push it into the wall with push pins, and then put the box top on the bottom. You don't even need nails or a hammer then, just use push pins. That is really, really clever, Tom. Robert says, any chance of a viticulture roll and write? We don't have any plans for that, Robert, but we do have a roll and write game that we're putting out later this year called Rolling Realms. So we are putting our toes in the waters of roll and writes, but it was a game specifically designed for that purpose. It would take a lot, I think, for me to to have this version of a game, to say that here's a game and here is the roll and write version of the game. Here's the dice version of the game. Here's the card version of the game. That very rarely excites me from a marketing perspective or as a gamer perspective. However, I love your creativity there, and if you're excited by it, make it. Yeah, make a version of it and see how it works. See if you're happy with it, and just have fun with it. I always want to encourage creativity about our games. If you're excited about something like that, to pursue it and have fun with it on your table. There's nothing wrong with that. Oh, Jazz dropped by. Hey, Jazz. He says, hope all is well. Any upcoming games or Kickstarters that I'm excited to release and get to the table? He says, for me, Cryo is high on my list. Cryo does look exciting. I mentioned Cubitos a little bit earlier. You may have missed that, Jazz, but I'm excited to play Cubitos. A friend has a copy, so I'm going to check that out soon. And I just played Burgle Brothers 2. That was on my list, but I got it and played it yesterday. Let me look at my pile over here. I haven't played Arch Travels yet, but I'm still excited to play that. Ooh, I have a hungry kitty back here. Hey, bud. Here we go. Walter's yelling at me in the background. But what else is coming up really soon that I'm excited about? I actually was just looking at my list of games that I'm excited about in the future. I'm blanking on what they were right now. New games coming out soon. There are some Kickstarters that I'm backing. I'm backing one from Pencil First Games called Floriferous. Great name. I'm backing Eternal Palace. I'm backing Caper Europe and Gift of Tulips. And I backed the Coyote and Crow role-playing game. Just, I'm not really a role player, but I'm curious to see what they're doing with that. See how that goes. Yeah. So those are a few. Yeah. And I'm excited to hear what you think about Cryo on your YouTube channel, Jazz. Ian says, do you feel like the pandemic has created more long-term board gamers? Do you see them dropping off as things get back to more normal? I think it is probably, I think that's a great point, a great question. I think it has created more long-term gamers. I think the board game hobby will have benefited greatly in the long run from that, which is a sad thing to say, I think, because, people's lives are much more important than games. But I do think based on that question, I do think that there are a lot more people who are maybe more open to hobby games than were before the pandemic. Let's see, just scrolling down a little bit here to answer a few more questions before I go. Sirkin says, I've ever played Micro Macro Crime City. I have not heard of Micro Macro Crime City, but it won an award, so I probably should hear about that. I just claimed earlier in the chat that I've heard of most games, and that is one that I have not heard of. So yeah, thank you for letting me know about that. Um, Geronimo says, "Wait, there's a book. He already ordered it." Oh, thank you, Geronimo. That's very nice of you to do and say, yeah, it's a book about crowdfunding that tells my story. It kind of teaches you. The goal of it is to teach you how to be a better crowdfunder while telling you a story along the way. It's a narrative format instead of kind of like a check off the box format like my blog. Shakid says, "What are my thoughts on app-assisted games, Detective, for example?" My overarching thought for app-assisted games is if the app enhances the play, if the app solves a problem that you couldn't solve without the app, then I think that's great. I think that's a great thing to do. I haven't played Detective, but I did enjoy like what the app did in Journeys in Middle Earth. I thought that the app was really helpful there for tracking damage and letting you telling you where to lay out tiles and tokens and things like that. Yeah. Richard is really excited about Lost Empires from Colossal, a great two-player card game. Interesting. I'm curious to hear about that when it comes out. And it looks like I just reached the end of the comments, which is perfect timing. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. I love having these chats, and if anything comes to mind after in the future, if you watch this, pop over to YouTube, look at the YouTube version of this, and post your comments and questions there, and we'll continue the conversation. I hope you have a great week, and I will see you next Wednesday. Take care. Bye.